clear.
Okay.
We're really hoping that the next meeting, hopefully we can have in person. If we want to, we have got the city council chambers all divided up with plexiglass retainers between everybody. We have a little better video, so we could probably do it there. Again, I'm not a big fan of these online meetings, but we will comply with the EO.
Sounds good.
And we're really hoping that our workshop on the 16th will still be hopefully in person. We're still finding that out.
Getting some echo from Jeff. Nikki, is your door open?
My door is always open, but Jeff's is closed.
Oh.
I know, I'm hearing it too, actually. You want me to shut my door?
I don't think that'll help. Well, maybe Jim O'Neill's maybe is getting down there. He's on. Wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
Travis, take Alka back to school yet?
She's back, and then she came home last weekend because she got bored already.
The joys of college.
Yeah, so we spent all day Sunday driving her back and driving home.
Yeah, I think I'll be doing that this weekend myself. So we're making a last second unplanned trip to Nashville to see the Rogers family. And I think I gotta go to U of M, pick Ella up, bring her back, then go to Tennessee. And then on Sunday or Monday, whenever we come back, take her back to U of M. And yeah, so
That's a long drive.
yeah. Now it's probably gonna be my wife. She don't mind driving so much. Anyway.
I saw Terry get on a couple times and it keeps, I think she's getting kicked off for some reason on her internet or something. Oh, there she's back, trying to get back on again. I guess we'll give her a second.
What's up with the mask, Johnny?
Well, I sanitized my hands and I'm ready, so I'm not getting any virus.
There you go.
You know, Jeff has a lot of spittle coming out when he talks.
Even through the computer, John.
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah, she's gone again. I don't know.
I don't want to hold Mark up too much.
I can start it and then she can just come right in with the conversation or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully she can get realigned once we get through the quick.
Yeah, perfectly fine. Okay, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Nick, if you can note the roll.
President Stevens?
Here.
Vice President Ohm?
Here.
Member Mackin?
Present.
Member Willett?
Here.
And Terry's not here.
Okay, I need a motion to excuse Terry.
Motion to excuse Terry.
Yes.
Support, Ohm.
Okay. We need a roll call on that, Nikki.
Actually, Chris, we don't really have to do that technically. So, I mean, we're good. We're good with just having her gone right now.
We will move on.
Okay.
Next on the item is the consent agenda. First is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors held on August 5th of 2020. Also the regular meeting of the Michigan South Central Power Agency Board of Commissioners, which was held on July 2nd of 2020. Also included in the agenda is the departmental reports, which includes the Board of Public Utilities operation reports and financial statements for July of 2020. The bills and accounts for period ending August 26th of 2020, the power cost projections, power supply cost projections, and also the MERS defined benefit pension plan statement for the quarter ending of June 30th of 2020. Is there anything in there that someone would like to discuss or has questions about? Seeing none, I would move to have a motion. Does anyone want to make a motion on that?
I'll make a
Motion
mo-
Who do I got?
Mackin.
Mackin?
support, Ohm.
Okay, roll call vote, Nikki.
Vice President Ohm?
Yes.
Member Mackin?
Yes.
Member Willett?
Yes.
And I don't see Terry's not quite here yet. President Stevens?
Yes. Okay, next on, let's go to the regular agenda. We'll be moving to the proposed time of use, the TU or TOU rate. I will move that over to you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Beauchamp. Many of you have heard the chance to hear Mark speak. He's a nationally renowned speaker on the APPA circuit. Obviously, he's an expert not only for Michigan, but internationally as well. He is obviously started with us a long time ago on helping us set our rates. And a little backstory on this is we knew that we wanted to do some changes, not only for all of our customers, but specifically for our 3 largest customers. So we started down this road last fall to try to say, hey, how can we adjust for the large customers that really don't fit our normal profile of a regular industrial or even any of our, obviously not a residential. So we have 3 customers that we want to look at time of use. This doesn't mean we're not going to raise rates for our regular customers. As we discussed earlier, due to COVID, we decided that we would normally be adjusting their rates July 1st. Those rate increases will be coming back for January 1 increases. And those are pretty much a net revenue increase based on Mark's recommendations that would allow us to raise the fixed fee, but reduce our energy costs. So those will be forthcoming, but they really don't really speak to the time of use rates. And what we're wanting to do is kind of do something different for our larger industrials that are so large that they're a little bit different. So we looked at our 3 largest customers, and we've been working with Mark now, like I said, since last fall. These time of use rates, I'm gonna let Mark talk about them, but we feel it's a more fair way to treat our customers. Ultimately, we'd like to see everybody on a time of use rate. We're kind of an early adopter of this, but it's no different than what's happened on some of the IOUs. If you go to California, Mark can tell you about what they're doing. And a lot of it's going to be changing, obviously due to the electrification of our nation in terms of electric vehicles, how power is generated, either whether it's renewables. And it's really going to make a difference on making power or point you're going to be make your own decisions based on points of cost, so that you can either say, hey, I don't want to run my dishwasher in the middle of the day when power is 70 cents a megawatt, or excuse me, a kilowatt hour. I'd much rather do it in the middle of the night where it's 10 cents an hour. So just really want to have a little segue. With that, I want to turn over to Mr. Mark Beauchamp, and I'm going to share my screen. And Mark, I'll be in control of your PowerPoint. So I'm switching over. So just a second here. And hopefully everybody should be able to see that screen. And so for screen 2. So hopefully, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
general statements.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff,
All right, I
can
talked
I
Jeff.
Jeff, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just noticed in the agenda, that you had a public comment before the consent agenda. I think you guys missed it. So when Mark is done, perhaps you might want to push that in at that point.
We can do that.
Good catch. Mark, I'm going to turn this over to you. It's all yours. Mark? Find you, Mark.
There we go. Sorry about that. I just want to expand a little bit on what Jeff had said. He had said that I've worked with you for several years. I just want to mention that Coldwater was the very first utility I did work for when I started my company back in 2001, and I really appreciated the opportunity. And it's really helped me throughout the years in the development of my business. So now we've done cost of service work for, and as far as time of use work, for over 30 utilities around the country. And what we did with Coldwater is we started this process several months ago, trying to identify how much it costs to provide service during each hour of the day in Coldwater. And the ultimate objective of this is, as Jeff had said, is to send a price signal to customers so that they have the ability to control their electric charges. They can either avoid the use during peak time to avoid that charge, shift it to the off-peak hours, or to purchase enabling type devices that allow them to automatically shift their usage. So we worked with Coldwater staff as well as your three largest customers in the review of this time of use rate and the development of it. And I wanted to present to the board the results of and our recommendation as far as the time of use rate. Jeff, you want to go to the second slide? So as everybody knows, electric costs change throughout the day. Normally, as demand increases, so do your costs. You tend to peak in the early afternoon hours, sometimes in the evening, just depends. But as your demand increases, your costs also go up because you pay more in demand costs, you need more capacity. Usually, energy purchases that you have to make from the market are more expensive. And so we want to send that price signal to customers because under normal rates, we charge a flat kilowatt hour rate for everybody, irrespective of when it's being used. So we want to send that better price signal for our customers to understand or have an understanding what the true cost of electricity is that they're using. And then with that knowledge, then the customers can choose to use the electricity and pay the cost, to use it in a different time period, or as I mentioned before, to purchase enabling devices that allow them to shift their usage. Now, the time of use rate that we developed has 4 basic components that I want to go over with you. And Jeff, if you could go to the next slide. The upper part of this slide is the energy rates. And you can see there's on-peak and off-peak, and we have winter and summer rates. So if you look at like your transmission customers, these are customers that are served pretty much directly off the transmission line that comes into Coldwater. And when you're served at that high of a voltage level, you basically there's very limited losses that occur in the electricity, because as electricity goes through wires, losses tend to increase. So if you look at the transmission rates, like the on-peak rate for transmission in the winter is 8.43 cents per kilowatt hour. The primary rate, which is customers that own their own transformer, but Coldwater has to supply some of the distribution wires to get the electricity to them. And so in the application of that, there's system losses that occur in the transformation. So as a result, the rate is slightly higher to accommodate for those losses. So it goes from 8.43 cents to 8.56 cents. Then you have secondary voltage. This is where most of your customers in Coldwater are served. Secondary voltage means that Coldwater provides the infrastructure right up to the facility. So all the transformation is owned by Coldwater. So again, there's additional losses that occur during that transformation. So the rate goes up to 8.81 cents. So that's the on-peak energy rates. Now the off-peak rates, if we just focus on the secondary, is 2.92 cents. So you can see that there's quite a cost difference between on-peak usage and off-peak usage. And also there's a difference between winter cost and summer cost. If you go to the bottom part of that, the on-peak cost during the summer at secondary voltage is 11.9 cents. So it's about 3 cents greater than in the winter. And the off-peak rate is at 3.12 cents. So these are the rates that we're hoping to get approved and by the board. And then you have, that's the first part of the rate. The second part of the rate is the local charge. This is for the use of Coldwater's distribution infrastructure. So at a secondary voltage level, they're using all of the distribution lines, and the charge for that is $4.97 per kW of demand that they create on the system. At primary voltage, it's $4.14, and at transmission, it's 95 cents. And again, it's so much less at transmission because they're taking service right off of the transmission line that comes into Coldwater. So there's very little infrastructure that Coldwater needs to provide. So that's the second part of the charge. The third part of the charge is the monthly facilities charge. This is a fixed monthly charge of $495 per month, which basically covers the cost for the meter and the cost to install the meter, read the meter, replace the meter, to do the billing. Those are that $495 recovers the metering cost and the administrative cost of the account. So the next part of the rate, if you want to go to the next slide, Jeff. As part of this rate, transmission costs, we made a direct pass-through. So if METC peaks, let's say at 6 o'clock in the afternoon on July 22nd, and that's when Coldwater's costs are determined for transmission. We will then look at how much that customer is using on July 22nd at 6 o'clock in the evening, and whatever they're using, the transmission cost will be a direct pass-through to them. So at the transmission level, the charges for a customer survey transmission is $5.89 per kW of what they're using at the time of Coldwater's peak, or I should say at METC's peak. At primary voltage, it's $6.07, and at secondary voltage, it's $6.24. So those are the four main components that make up the rate. Now, on the next slide is the time of use hours. So the on-peak hours in the summer and the winter period runs from 8 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. And the off-peak is from 11 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning. All weekends and holidays are considered off-peak. And the holidays that we use in the analysis are these 6 holidays that I've listed there: New Year's, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas will all be considered off-peak. So the next slide is the PCA. Now, when we develop this rate, because of the power supply cost and the changes that have occurred, the PCA is projected to increase. And so as part of this, we wanted to true up the power cost adjustment base. And by doing this, it actually lowers the energy charge for the customers on this rate. The current base is 6.03 cents, and we want to change that to 6.74 cents. Now, how the PCA works, as you're probably aware of, is if power supply costs are, say, 7.03 cents on average, the PCA is a penny per kilowatt hour. By changing the base to 6.74, the charge will only be about 3.1 cents, 0.031 cents per kilowatt hour. So the PCA will actually go down for these customers. Now, the next slide is how that local charge works. That's for the use of the distribution system. And the way that this rate would be calculated is if it's a secondary voltage service, they would be charged $4.97 per kW, and that kW demand part will be determined based on the peak of the current month or the previous 11 months. So whatever the peak is that they create throughout the year, we have to make sure that that capacity is available to them in our distribution system. So we are going to charge them $4.97 based on that annual peak. At primary service, it's $4.14, and at the sub-transmission, it's 95 cents. So, and the last slide I have is the impacts on the customers that will be going on this rate. For the 3 customers that we've targeted to go on this rate, they will see a reduction in electric charges of $591,000 annually. So that amount is, like I said, they're going to save $591,000 by doing this. They can save more if they shift their usage or if they can avoid that transmission peak. The transmission tends to occur at a narrow time frame. If they can reduce their usage during that time period, they'll save money on transmission, and Coldwater will also see the same amount of savings. So by doing this, it gives the customers greater control over their electric charges, and it also creates a win-win for the customer and for Coldwater Board of Public Utilities if customers actually shift their usage. So if they shift their usage to save money, our power supply costs will go down by theoretically the same amount of money. So it's a win-win for the customer and for Coldwater Board of Public Utilities. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
I know one thing that's come up is how do we choose these 3? These obviously 3 customers use way more than anybody else, almost 2 or 3 times, and sometimes 4 times as much as anybody else. So this is kind of our first step down this road. Eventually, we're going to see how this works out, and then kind of flourish down the road and hopefully keep expanding this to all of our customers over time. Mark, can you give the example of, and I've drawn a blank of the community that you said had a plan to start implementing these over a period of years, and what the take was?
There's several communities. The one I may have mentioned is, well, first of all, just to give you some examples, Sacramento, California, they put in mandatory time of use rates for all of the residential customers. All of their customers in the system is on time of use. There's another utility out in Colorado that what we did is we implemented a 5-year plan to move all their customers over to time of use. And we did it in a manner that we created the on-peak and off-peak rates, but we created it with very little differential to start with. So there's minimal customer impacts to start off with. But then over the 5-year period, continue to move the on-peak and off-peak charges apart so that they're based upon the cost in year 5. So our customers don't see immediate, because there's going to be winners and losers when you go to time of use. Some customers are going to benefit, some customers are going to increase their cost. So by phasing it in over a period of time, it will smooth the transition period. Now, these customers that right now under the current rate structure, if the time of use rate is to somebody's benefit, it means that under the current rate structure, they're being overcharged because there's no differential between on-peak and off-peak rates in the current like residential rates. So, but this is the rates that the industry is moving toward to help promote solar and renewables and battery installations and electric vehicles, charging stations. The industry is moving toward these time of use rates. The only reason, in a sense, they haven't been used in the past is because the metering costs associated with widespread implementation of time of use rates can be historically was very expensive. And of course, over the past 10 years, it's come down to a level that it's economical to install these hourly recording meters on all the customers. So we're seeing our rates basically catching up with the technology. But my feeling is in the next 5 to 10 years, most residential customers in the United States will be on a time of use rate. Right now, in 2018, when we did the numbers from the Department of Energy, about 5% of residential customers in the country are currently on time of use, and about 50% of the utilities are offering some form of time of use. Most, or I should say, 50% of the residential customers have the ability to opt to go on time of use. So it's definitely the wave of the future. And this is the first step in the process that hopefully we'll be able to expand in the coming years.
I have one question in regards to the time of use hours. How is that determined? Is from the 8 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Is that just based on these 3 customers, or is that based on basically what we're doing, you know, what happens nationally or other people that's using the TOU?
No, it was very specific to Coldwater. We looked at several things. One is when Coldwater actually peaks at different times of the day. We also looked at the MISO market and the market prices of power at different hours of the day. So it's very specific to Coldwater. It's not anything that we brought in from someplace else.
Okay.
It is something though that can be refined as time goes on. But what I mean by refined is right now this is just as on-peak and off-peak time of use rate. What a lot of utilities are moving toward is to create what's called a critical peak period, which is where you're very likely to create a peak, to try to send even a stronger price signal there. So a lot of utilities are moving toward 3 time periods. So and that's another potential refinement that could be made in the future.
We do have plans. So, you know, obviously these rates usually use historical data in order to base our assumptions on. Is to update once these got a full year of implementation. They actually do another cost of service study, probably in the spring of 2022, to really get the full impact of a year's worth of the time of use rates and really kind of making sure that all of our assumptions were right on this and that we continue to go down the right path. And at that time, see, do we need to add it, or do we allow more people on the time of use rate at that time? Or how do we keep moving this forward a little bit? So again, this is where, in a way, we're kind of dipping our toe in the water a little bit. We're also trying to get some, you know, because of the large load profiles of the 3, trying to say, hey, how can we help them? Because obviously they're just different than any of our other customers.
Yeah, just an FYI for the board's information is one of the things that we did with this rate that I probably would not do if we did a whole widespread implementation of it, like the residential, is the transmission. We made that very unique to these larger customers. And even though we can expand that to others, we probably won't want to do that to all the customers to have where we have to coincidize their transmission, their usage. at the time of the transmission peak. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Yeah, I thought I had read an article, and I don't remember which trade magazine it was for the electrical industry about, I think it was out west somewhere, where they basically did the same program and they would alert their customers when it went to peak so that they would know, they would have the ability at that point, or the decision to make whether they wanted to utilize electricity or not utilize electricity during the peak times. So this is kind of an application similar to that, from my understanding.
Correct. What you described, Chris, is what's called a variable peak pricing program. And how that works is you create a third potential time period that's callable by the utility. So, for example, if Jeff looks at the profile and says, I think we're going to have a peak at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and so he calls a peak period, and that gets broadcast through text, through the radio, and the costs during that time period are substantially greater. But that's called a variable peak pricing program.
I know this is pretty hard on an electronic meeting, but does anybody else have any other meetings? We really want to get this rate adopted and approved to city council so that by October 1st, these customers can start taking advantage of these savings, especially there are savings, as Mark mentioned, on the transmission rates that are extremely beneficial to these larger customers and also to us.
So we're helping the 3 largest companies manage their usage. And so is that providing us some protection if we have to go out and buy energy on the spot market? I mean, is that what we're doing, or a little help there?
It does actually. It protects the utility from the standpoint, especially with the transmission charge, because the customers are going to be charged whatever it costs to bring transmission into or bring electricity into Coldwater. So from that standpoint, it lowers your risk. When you look at these more advanced rate structures, like time of use, and if you were to graph it on a risk profile, right now the utility holds a substantial amount of the risk because we charge a flat rate. So sometimes it's a lot higher and we absorb the cost, although we eventually recover through a power cost adjustment mechanism. But as you go to these more advanced rate structures, such as time of use, from a risk perspective, what's occurring is we're shifting the risk from the utility to the customer, because the customer has the ability to manage the risk. We don't really have that ability. So by shifting it to the customers, then if they take advantage of those price signals to lower their cost, we save theoretically the same amount. So it lowers our risk. So it actually helps to mitigate the risk with these more advanced rate structures.
I'm assuming that this will also potentially reduce the amount of open market megawatts we have to go out to purchase new. Is that a safe assumption? Now, I mean, we're not going to know it initially, but once we get a track record of this, it may be where we don't have to go to contract for open market for a year or something like that. It may lower some of that cost.
Jeff probably has a better indication of that, but my belief is in looking at the 3 customers that we modeled, especially one of the customers that you have has a great deal of control to take advantage of this rate that's to both of our benefits. So it has the potential of definitely keeping Coldwater's costs lower. I think that's only a partial answer to your question, but
on the power supply, that it could lead into that. Energy is going to be the energy. The biggest cost savings is really on the transmission, as Mark mentioned. You know, we have to buy power so much in advance. The question is, you know, there's one customer that's still looking for a real-time market price. And as Mark mentioned, the risk, if they decide they want to take more risk and yet we're still recovering all of our costs, we're looking at being able to provide them that additional market play. If they want to hedge more than we can, we just have to make sure that we're recovering our strand costs, like our investments in Prairie States, our investments in our hydros down through AMP. As long as we're getting our money back for that and they want to take on more risk, you know, why should we stop them? There's really no, you know, disadvantage to us. It's more advantages to them while not hurting us financially or sharing those costs on to the rest of our community.
Okay.
What, Chris, one of the things that you mentioned in that article you read is peak shaving.
Mhm.
A lot of peak shaving is really done in PJM, where they say, hey, they're based on the 5 coincidental peaks in the PJM market. Obviously in MISO, we're a little bit different. MISO doesn't necessarily tell us when that peak is. There's some indicators of when that is, but it's usually, we found out today what the METSI peak was for last month. So they really, the way that they bill, peak shaving isn't really something they want to, you know, tell people to do, but it's one of those things we're allowing the customer to be able to do that. So hopefully MISO changes over time, but I'm not sure when that will be.
Maybe I missed this or I just didn't get it. How I understand how the customer saves money, but but you said that we would save money as well. How does that happen? I don't understand that.
Oh, sure. That's a great question. Transmission is billed to you based on how much Coldwater is using at the time of the METSI peak. And the cost is like $5.73 kW. So if we make that $5.73 a direct pass through to customers and they respond to it and they reduce their usage during that hour, they save $5.73. And Coldwater also saves $5.73 because our transmission costs go down by that amount. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
In addition, so that's the transmission side, but on the power supply cost, one of the things to remember is we don't own all of our own generation. So when the greenhouse is running and we're running our peaks, which is about 100 megawatts, we're about 50% buying into the market. In the summer times when the greenhouse is off, we're about 20 to 23% buying on the market. So each hour that we're buying on the market has a rate. And so not only is there a transmission cost savings, but if I can avoid paying at a high rate, so like July 10th was a high date, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. There was a $500 per megawatt hour. It was like at 7 o'clock at night when everybody came home from work, turned on the air conditioners, the factories were maybe still running. Well, if we can keep that factory from running during that $500 hour, we now save $500 and we're able to get them a lower by them avoiding using power during that peak. We got to remember, we're charging them, even if it's 12 cents on peak, well, that hour might have cost me $500 for that same energy that I provide them. So there is a little bit also of a pass-through. And that's where Mark was talking about that risk. The utility is assuming that risk for those hours where you have an anomaly of a $500 hour. Well, if you move that out and things sometimes go the other way, that's where we recover our risk because we don't always charge every hour the exact dollar that we're paying, if that helps as well.
Thank you.
Electric markets are very tricky things. So I give you that.
If you don't mind, I'd like to give a theoretical example of the transmission savings that might help you understand, Terry. So theoretically, each of our big three customers cost us about $1,000, or I'm sorry, $1 million a year in transmission costs. If we make that a direct pass through to them, that's $3 million that we don't have to pay. And they will have to pay that $1 million or reduce their usage and pay something less. But we'll see that $3 million savings immediately because we've passed that on directly to them.
In a sense, that's correct. I probably want to phrase it a little bit different. Let's say that the transmission for those 3 customers is $3 million, and we send this price signal to them. And because of the price signal, now the cost related to transmission for them is only 2.5 million. So their costs go down, but we've also saved the $500,000. So in a sense, creating a win-win.
Sorry, any other questions for Mark before I let him go? Okay, I see everybody shaking their heads. No, Mark, you must have did a good job. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, we need a motion on the table either to accept or whatever the wish of the board is.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed time of use rate.
Or,
Order.
I got Willette,
yes.
Roll call vote, Nikki?
Member Mackin,
Yes.
Member Willette,
Yes.
Member Whelan,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
President Stevens.
Yes. Okay. Okay, moving on to the next thing. We have got,
Chris, can we go back to public comment
yeah.
just real
Yep.
quick?
yep, public comments. We got anything, Pat?
We've got one caller on the meeting here. If you want to make a comment, please hit *9 and we will unmute you.
Thanks for that reminder.
No problem.
Yeah, no response. So I think you're good to go.
Okay. Next on is the power supply cost adjustment. Back to you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that we should have picked up actually a couple months ago, when we bought and took the Project 4 off the books of Michigan South Central Power Agency, those costs in the past have always been running through our power cost. The actual language didn't account, only says that the cost, the monthly power bill from the Michigan South Central Power Agency was included in our power cost adjustment. Well, because we moved the cost off the agency books and on our books, we had to change the wording so that those costs that we're incurring for our Project 4 natural gas plant get included into our total power supply costs so that they can be included in the power supply cost adjustment. So what you have in front of you, and I can share my screen, is really just redlining some of the words for the power supply cost adjustment. And again, the one thing it also does is this power supply cost adjustment is different than what we're right now planning on doing for the time of use rate, because they're going to have the time of use rate will have their own power cost adjustment for the time being. And then this is really all it's adding is just those costs from Project 4. So we appropriately recapture all of our costs. So that's all it does. Just changing a little wording.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Jeff on that? Seeing none, I need a motion.
Make the motion, Mackin.
Support.
Okay, Member Willette,
Yes.
Member Whelan,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
and President Stevens.
Yes. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is the base energy charge adjustment.
Yep, that's me again. So one of the things that we talked about back at the July board meeting was, hey, let's set this base energy rate high enough so that we know we weren't going to let it go higher than that, because we knew we were going to take our $2.1 million out of our reserves in response to the capacity auction at that time being at CONE, cost of new entry. One of the things that at that time, when we fixed that rate, that I probably didn't think of is that, well, what would happen if all of a sudden we had a month like July, where all of a sudden the Fermi nuclear plant shut down and our power costs drastically shot up. So I'm going to share my screen just so we can follow along with the memo that I have. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to point out was, if you can follow my cursor, you know, the actual power supply costs were 7.8 cents a kilowatt hour. We have budgeted 7.3 cents per kilowatt hour. So that difference of a half of a penny wasn't recaptured in July and August. One of the things that by allowing us to let that float a little bit more, we know what our base should be because we have our power costs. I'm going to jump to this slide here and hopefully make this a little bit bigger for everybody to read. So this is July. As you can see, the final 12-month tally is pretty much where we thought it would be. But all of a sudden July, and if I were to bring up August, you'd see August was a lot higher loss than what we figured. So for the month of July, we actually dipped into our savings by $414,000, which is about $114,000 higher than what we had budgeted. Because if you look, here's my $2.1 million here at the, $2,089,000, which is close enough to my 2.1. This was our budget. Well, we are already, if we don't make a change, we're going to be $114,000 behind. So we're going to either play catch up, you know, all at the end or kind of a little bit at a time. So what I'm actually asking for is some flexibility. And each month, I think at the request of board member Mackin, we've added that cost of service projection on that bill so you can see it every month and where we are and where it's going. But we do got to make sure that we don't get so far behind that there's either a great big power cost adjustment. So what I'm asking for is to allow the ability to raise that so that we kind of keep in line by the end of the year. So I can't tell you exactly what that cost would be, but for every month we would be adjusting that up and down. And we can give an update maybe in the director's report of what that power cost adjustment that we're billing for that month will be, to provide that transparency that I really, really like. But again, we're already eating $2.1 million. I don't think we want to go any further. And part of that will tie into the next discussion is because I know our capacity costs don't look like they're going to go down for the next 2 years, which means $2.1 million this year, 2.1, then 2.1 before the projections show that those costs are continuing to go down. So it gets a little scary that we can't get so far behind, but I also want to make sure that everybody is kind of feeling an even pain and not ping ponging, because some of these larger industrials, they really feel the power cost adjustment. Myself on some bills, it's as much as 10% or a penny on our 10-cent power. So it does happen. It does go up and down. But I think if we fix it in there, it won't necessarily be good for us long term. So.
Well, I would agree that you can't continue to run a ½ cent loss per kilowatt. We can't continue that. I know Travis was a little worried before, I believe, about running and spending $2.1 million of reserves to basically subsidize this for the time being. So I would agree with what Travis said previously on that conversation, that even with this situation, we cannot continue to run more in the reserves. Otherwise, we need to have that for capital expenses.
Agreed. So I guess the only thing I'm requesting is just the ability to kind of move that 655 and not lock that into place. And each month we'll have to adjust that, and I will report back monthly what it was for the prior month, because we won't have it figured by the time our board meeting hits. So it'll always be for the prior month.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns about allowing him to do that, or?
As long as it's transparent, we can see what's being done. I have no problem with it.
And this is automatic anyway. It's just the fact that we took action in July to kind of set that a hard number. It just makes it so I can't, our rules and rates actually allow it to go up to, this is not unprecedented. Even as early as November 2017, we actually were billing 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So there was a big spike, and then it kind of dropped down. Power costs went really low in 18 and 19. And now we're seeing that rise back up again, primarily be due to the capacity markets.
I guess if no one has any additional questions, do you have anything to add, Jeff?
Oh, sir.
Okay. If there's no additional questions, I need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second or support?
Mac in support.
Thank you. Roll call, Nikki.
Member Whelan,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
Member Willett,
Yes.
and President Stevens.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Next on the agenda is future power supply discussion, which is with the Michigan Electric Transmission Company, which is METC, joint use pole agreement.
Oh, that's two, I'm sorry, two different items, Chris.
Okay. Well, let's start with the power supply discussion then.
Yes, and that's me again. Again, I'm just full of great news tonight. So one of the things that we've been talking about, if you even go back to our last actual in-person workshop, Paul Beckhusen actually talked about the fact of the capacity auction and how are we going to make sure that we have adequate capacity going forward. At that time, we looked at, various scenarios about, do we build our own generation? Do we play the market? Do we play, how do we handle this? It's really not the energy side, but it's more the capacity. Obviously, we've been playing in the market on capacity for a while. We don't have it all, we don't have generation so that we have that in-house and covered. So we had contracts. Well, those contracts in the past have served us very well. It actually was a really a significant cost savings. Last year, as you know, in May, the capacity auction went to Cone, cost new entry, and it kind of bit us a little bit. If you're gambling, the house will win, and they again, that's a little, kind of just an analogy, but the cost went much higher than what was anticipated. We know that at some point that cost will come back down. It is set at Cone to obviously entice people to start building generation in Michigan. So once that happens, and more generation is built, ultimately those capacity markets will start dropping again. It is anticipated that within the next 2 years, there will be significant generation built in Michigan, or they will increase and improve the transmission between the PJM markets and MISO markets. So there's a lot of different options that can be done to reduce the capacity auction. One of the things that we have been looking at is, do we build our own peaking plant? The MSEPA, along with the MPPA, is looking at building and purchasing a 100 megawatt peaking plant that would be located actually in Coldwater. That would provide us not only capacity, because these engines really won't run, but it will give us some energy, because these engines have a heat rate that they will only run when the cost of the units generates power at a cost lower than what the market is. So for instance, when Fermi went off, and I was talking about those July dates where all of a sudden the cost of power were $500 a megawatt hour, we would be running our engine. So instead of us paying on the open market at 50%, if we were in the market for 50% at that time, instead of buying on the open market, we would actually turn on our generators as well as our Project 4 generator. So we would have generation. We would actually be getting paid that $500, but still paying our cost at, say, $40 a megawatt hour. So there would be that savings. But there's several times, actually more often than not, even the same goes true with our Project 4 plant, where the market price is, say, just for example, $20, but our cost to generate, just the operating costs with our fuel costs, are more like $38. So we don't run those engines unless the price of power, which we watch every single day, goes above that $38. So if it's less, we don't run because it's cheaper to buy in the market. When that cost of energy goes above that $38 a megawatt, we turn on our engines because we can produce the power cheaper than we can buy it on the market. The same would be true of these peaking projects. Now, not only is there that analysis going on, but there's also still word of the Marshall Energy Center. The Marshall Energy Center is a proposed 500 megawatt natural gas plant. It wouldn't necessarily be a peaking plant. This would be more of a base load, which means that it's always running type of plant. It would have a very low heat rate. So for instance, a heat rate is basically, the price of gas is usually in BTUs. You take the BTUs times the heat rate, that's your cost of energy. So here we have our heat plant at this Project 5, I want to call it, the Coldwater peaking plant, is like 10,000. Well, the heat rate at the Marshall Energy Center is more like 67. So you can kind of see they would run more because their operating costs would be much lower. So the question that will be presented before the board is, 1, do we just buy in the market? 2, do we invest in a Coldwater peaking project, which would be Project 5? Or 3, do we invest in the Marshall Energy Center? Or 4, do we say, hey, no, we want no part of natural gas, and all we want to do is invest in solar panels or renewable energy? Today, myself, Bob Granger, and Jim went up and visited the largest solar farm in Michigan that is under construction. It covers 2,000 acres and only generates 353 megawatts. Now, again, that's still pretty good, but again, you can kind of see the amount of land that you have to take up to produce that type of those megawatts. So it's always a little offset on philosophies. These decisions that we're going to be making here and they're coming soon. So probably by the next meeting, or at least by the November meeting, we're going to have to make some very tough decisions on the future of our power supply, because at this next meeting in October, we will have to make a decision whether to move forward with one of these two alternatives. At least, are we going to say yes to the Project 5, the core peaking unit, or to the Marshall Energy Center? Because we are in the MISO queue. The MISO queue says, hey, we've waited 2 years. Now all of a sudden they're ready to study this issue. If they're a study issue, the next cost is like $380,000. So we're going to start spending real money out of our pockets to further the study to know whether this is viable or not, in terms of whether more transmission needs to be upgraded. And so, it has taken a long time to get there. This project started 2+ years ago. MISO is so backed up, and this is part of our problem that we had on the capacity market, because all these projects, all this proposed generation is in this queue, and they are not processing the paperwork because either they're overwhelmed or just can't get through all these proposed projects. So I know that's a long discussion, but it is one of those things that I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that we're going to have some very serious conversations about what needs to take place in a very short period of time. That's going to have a major impact on how we obtain our power supply in the years to come. Because if you build a Coldwater peaking plant, that's probably a 40-year asset. That's going to come with millions of dollars behind it. If we invest in the Marshall Energy Center, that will be more of a purchase power agreement, but it will be a long-term purchase power agreement. You're going to be locked in for 20, 30 years. you never know, the markets, just like financial markets, you invest in the stock market, you're always, in a way, it's a legal gambling if you think about it. There is no right or wrong answer. The answer is use the best information you're provided at the time. That information is going to be provided to us through AMP as well as the MPPA, because the AMP and MPPA are partnering on both on investigating both the Marshall Energy Center and the Coar Peaking project. So these are some very serious conversations, and it's millions of dollars. So for instance, the peaking plant is in excess of $50 million. We're going to own a share of that, probably about 38 megawatts. That for us is 20 some million dollars. So that's kind of the scale of where we are. Again, it's something that does scare me a little bit, because whenever you decide to put assets in the ground, that's the direction you go. And you don't know what's going to happen with the elections. If fracking goes away, natural gas prices could go higher. That means that would be a good investment. If all of a sudden legislation changes and all of a sudden they say, hey, no more natural gas and everything's got to be renewables, all of a sudden the prices could go lower in natural gas. Well, that's okay for the operating costs, but ultimately, if you can't build that plant, your costs are going to go up, because now we're going to be required to build more and more solar. There's also the philosophical debate, and some communities are having it, some people aren't. So communities like Traverse City, Lansing has said we want to be 100% renewable by the year 2040. We are not, we're at maybe 16% renewable, 12% when the greenhouse are running at full strength. So you can see we're a long ways from 100% to 12% is, according to my math, about 88% off. So those are all decisions that need to be kind of thinking of. It is a community decision, because there's no right or wrong answer. But again, not to scare anybody, but just want to make sure that everybody's aware that this is out there. So when I bring it up in the future months, we can have that discussion. This is no different than what was said to us in the workshop with Paul 2 years ago. So it's a very serious conversation we're going to have. And, we have to make the best decision based on the information we have at the time. We will be led through these discussions by AMP, as well as they have a consulting company, which is the Energy Authority. So they are looking at these proposals now. There's also, should we be buying more solar? So again, we are keeping up on all these decisions, but that's just a precursor for things to come. So I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
So are you saying that MEC is now willing to come back with a better price? Because originally they did present us with a price and it was just too much.
Yeah, things have changed for them. So I think that they were hoping to get a lot more municipal offtake, people taking their offtake. That didn't happen. So I think what they did is they reached out to potentially some IOUs, and that has kind of been a little bit of a game changer. So I think if, there's risk in the Marshall Energy Center, because as you know, when you build anything, the biggest risk is you're probably okay once you get things in the ground, because you don't know what you're going to find underground through the construction risk. So the Marshall Energy Center originally was what we considered out of the market. But now with the cost of new entry, which again, the MISO capacity auction going to, $8 a megawatt a month, now, that $4 looks pretty good. But when it was last year, when it was 80 cents or 78 cents compared to $8, that Marshall Energy Center didn't look so good at $4. Well, now it looks pretty good. So that's kind of the dice gamble that we're expected to make to figure out how we're going to handle our capacity. And a lot of this isn't really energy. It's mostly capacity and how you're going to account for it, because the last thing anybody wants is to hit that light switch and make sure that light bulb goes off.
Okay. Any other questions for Jeff?
So will they be giving us, I don't know, case studies on the different avenues that we can pursue? Any information? How are we gonna, what will we have available to us?
Yep. So what we're going to do is MPPA is doing their own separate study. So is AMP. AMP is now also, their internal people are looking at it. In addition, they're also having T, which is the Energy Authority. They're a independent consulting. They're looking at what's the best route to go. The nice thing is in working in conjunction with the MPPA is we're going to be in with all the other Michigan players in the game on here. There's a few that probably won't be involved, but you're going to have your Lansings, your Hollands, you know, maybe not the big guys, but all the other Zealands and Grand Haven, all the other public powers in Michigan are all looking at the same project. So we won't be in this just Coldwater by ourselves. We will continue to have our partners of Hillsdale and Clinton. Union City has opted out, and Marshall is putting all of their eggs in the Marshall Energy Center. Totally understand, seeing it's in their backyard. So we get that. So that's all the news I have. I know it's not good news, but.
So Jeff, just clarify for me, because I might have bad information or I might be misunderstanding, but I thought the MEC was on hold because they could not get the investors they wanted. And that's like a 2 or 3 year build time.
Yeah, so they went ahead in the MISO queue. There was some debate on whether they're going to. They were talking about going on hold because they couldn't get the people, specifically the municipal electrics. They couldn't get them to commit to take the offtake. What has changed since probably last time anybody's talked about this is those IOUs have reached out to them, or I shouldn't say who exactly, I don't know who they exactly are, but a large investor has said, yes, I want some of this plant, which reduces everybody's risk. Because if they've got backing from other people want that offtake. So, you know, the risk of construction drops down. The risk that, hey, power's got to be higher because their rate is so much higher. They have also looked at restructuring their original offer. Instead of being like almost an owner of the plant, they're saying we're going to, because they've got this other offtake partner, it's more of a PPA, a purchase power set price, which reduces our risk dramatically.
Okay. Well, that's good, because when you said, you know, that Marshall was putting their eggs in that basket, I don't want to put it in a basket that puts them at risk, obviously, being a partner with them.
Yeah, and they can always jump back into our core peaking plant. They would just have to make up the cost that they said, hey, they don't want to be part of. They'd have to make those up.
Okay. Yep. Totally understandable. Any other questions?
What's the IOU stand for?
Sorry, a lot of acronyms in electric. Investor owned utility. So it's consumers, DTE, anybody who has shareholders, and that's the difference between IOUs, investor owned utilities, and municipal electrics is they're responsible to the Michigan Public Service Commission, where we are not, and they have shareholders to appease. So they're always looking for return on investment.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is going to be the Michigan Electric Transmission Company, the METC Joint Use Toll Agreement. Back to you again.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty quick. So when we started building our substation on Jonesville Road, and we were looking for our third transmission line to come in, one of the issues that ITC had is wanting to make sure that they can't make radial investments. So they couldn't just put a substation and come from the north and stop at Jonesville Road. They had to continue that investment. So it wasn't just 2 radial feeds. So basically the transmission line between the Jonesville substation and the Garfield substation that existed was sold to METC, technically ITC. And in doing so, one of the things that we still had a lot of our own distribution, a lot of our cable for our internet was already on there. So this joint use pole agreement allows us to continue our use of the distribution on those poles and as well as our telecommunications using on those poles. So it's really just allowing them, if there was a problem, they can share information with us, and this just says that we're using them jointly. I know Jim and Megan have worked on this diligently. Jim, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, this is actually just for the electrical distribution. There'll be another attachment agreement for the communication and fiber circuits.
Sorry about that. Yes, good point, Jim. Thank you.
This is very typical to what we would offer to anyone that wanted to attach to our poles with power or something similar, very similar to the telecom agreement as well. So they're not really asking for anything that we wouldn't ask for anyone that wanted to attach to our poles.
Does the board members have any additional questions? I see no. Okay, I need a motion.
Motion to approve. Willett.
Support Ohm.
Thank you. Roll call, Nikki.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
Member Willett,
Yes.
Member Whelan,
She's offline.
are you there, Terry, still? President Stevens,
Yes.
Terry, are you there? Oh, I think I heard her. Is that a yes?
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, okay, perfect, thanks.
Next on the agenda is the resolution number 20-03 authorizing membership into the NRTC, which is the National Rural Telecommunications Cooperative.
Yes.
Yes, she's already voting.
Little delayed reaction. So I'm going to turn this over to Pat. He knows more of this, and he actually wrote the memo. So Pat, do you want to briefly talk about this?
Yeah, so this is an agreement that really allows us to get the funds back at the end of the year from those folks, and also allow us to participate in some of their R&D programs. It's a very low $500 one-time investment. They've paid back dividends 23 out of the last 24 years, so we expect to get that money back within the first year or two. So yeah, just wanted to join in with that co-op officially, so that we have a little more say and we get those dividends.
We were members when we were doing our cable and stuff with them, right? Cable television.
That's NCTC.
Oh, okay.
It's two different groups.
Yep.
And we are still a member of NCTC. Yes. NRTC is the folks that are helping us with our help desk services.
Okay.
Soon. We're not onboarded all the way yet. We're working on that.
Okay. Any questions?
Pat,
Yes.
any other benefits besides basically recouping through the dividends?
Like I said, we do get to vote on R&D projects going forward. So kind of the direction that group is going in. We actually get a say in it to some extent. Small say, but we get a say. Those are really the two main benefits, though.
Anything else for Pat? Okay, thank you, Pat. You have anything to add, Jeff?
Nothing.
Okay. Need a motion authorizing the membership to the NRTC then.
Motion for authorization, Willett?
Support, Mackin.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
member Willett,
Yes.
member Whelan,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
and President Stevens.
Yes.
And Krista, you did see that I emailed you that application for your signature?
I did. Yep.
Okay.
I'll get that back to you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is the council chamber upgrade recommendation. Back to you,
I'm
Jeff.
gonna-
That would be me.
I'm gonna turn this right over to Pat, but again, just, he'll give you the update, but this is something that we need and something that, you know, I don't really like to pay for, but it's been a long time. So Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, this is, it's been about 18 years since we installed the AV equipment for the city council space. Technology has changed a lot in that time. We're really having difficulties with some of the equipment. Finding parts is difficult. So we're just looking to do a technology refresh for that space. And I've got a little slideshow here that kind of goes through the main functions of that upgrade. And this first part here is really not related to the upgrades themselves. It's just kind of an update for COVID, showing you that we did get the plexiglass dividers in. And you can't, the good news is you really can't see them here very well. So I took a close up to be able to see it a little better. But every one of those folks would be able to be divided, and they'll be able to get back to meetings there at the chambers. From there, you know, one of the big things is when you're talking about these technology improvements, a lot of it's in the background. It's not very exciting for the end users. It's the stuff that makes things operate. We did get 5 new pan tilt zoom cameras is what we're looking to get. We have 5 in there now. We did a little value engineering. We realized there's 2 cameras in a similar area. It would be on the south wall. We're going to reposition one of those over towards the lectern. So we actually, it would have been 6 cameras, is now 5. We do have, right now we don't have much flexibility in what kind of inputs we can put into this thing. It's if you got VGA, we can use that. If you got VGA, we can use that. That's pretty much it. So at this point, we'll be able to plug in HDMI sources. We'll be able to plug in VGA still, and there'll be a wireless solution as well, where folks that come in and want to do a presentation can do that wirelessly. The entire system is built to be 4K ready, but the cost of that 4K equipment on the endpoints, so the cameras, monitors, those sorts of things, is still pretty high. So we're not going to upgrade that equipment yet, but just to let you know that the equipment on the back end will fully support that stuff as those costs decrease. Integrated teleconferencing, you know, one of the big things was for the city council, Emily Rissman is with the National Guard, I think it is, and we were needing to find a way to get her back into meetings if she was out on deployment. And then of course with COVID, obviously this teleconferencing has really kind of taken off. I think if you were to look at what we're doing on YouTube, and I would, you know, recommend you guys go out there, that YouTube channel for Coldwater, and just see how many views that these public meetings have been getting. And you'll see that I think there's a demand for this. What's really nice about it is now people are getting, you know, actually what was said in the meeting rather than somebody's translation on the radio or the newspaper. You really can't beat that actual conversation. So we're looking to continue on with that and do that with more meetings, which comes up to this next point, one-touch recording. So when a smaller meeting, so it's not a BPU or a city council meeting, maybe it's the historic district that's meeting, they'll be able to just push one button on the council where the clerk sits, and that meeting will be recorded. Could be streamed as well. It'll probably be just recorded and then we'll upload it to stream later, but that's all possibilities. We just hasn't been finalized yet. Integrated audio control. This was always a real challenge for us because all of the equipment that supported that city council chambers is 2 floors down in the basement. So if we needed to up the volume on the speakers or change mic levels, we had to, it was a 2-person operation because one person had to do the adjusting and another person had to make some noise so you could hear it. But all of that stuff will be integrated right into the system, so we won't have to be walking all over the place to do it. Some wireless microphone options. We haven't had a lot of call for it, but we've had a few calls for it, and when we do, the few times that we did, it took a lot of work. We had to bring in a different lectern. We had to disassemble the microphones that were in there and rewire them over to that new lectern so that somebody that doesn't have a lot of projection in their voice could do some speaking in that space towards the back of the council chambers. And then a partition wall sensor. This is something that the company that we're working with added to it. I thought it was a brilliant idea. We've actually had this in the past where we'll have the partition wall closed. We'll have somebody in the chambers and we'll also have somebody in that back section at the same time. The poor people in the back section got to listen to everything that's going on in the other through the speakers right now. But with this wall sensor, when that wall is shut, it'll change the audio system so that it doesn't interrupt those other rooms. So that's kind of the boring stuff. Now we get to get on to some of this new stuff. This was a concern of Jeff's. When you're sitting in the audience towards, I guess it'd be the east side, you really can't see the folks on that east side of the table or the horseshoe with that lectern in the way. We're going to do some stuff to where we can move that lectern about 1 foot to the left, which is going to open up that sight line up to that area. And I'll get into that a little bit more. The lobby screen down in the downstairs, and it kind of goes to some of this COVID stuff. If we have capacity issues or things like that, or overflow, we've had overflow a few times since I've been here. But you'll be able to fully watch the meeting, almost like you're at a sporting event or something. We'll just be able to present it down there in the rotunda. We'll also be able to send it to the mobile screen, so we can position that anywhere we want. Some of the thoughts on that is if we were doing a public meeting, especially in a situation like we are in now, we could have people staged out here in these areas. And when it came time for public comment, someone could, control that flow into the council chambers and be able to talk. But overall, I think these are pretty cool improvements here. A big screen monitor behind the council horseshoe desk. That's a 98-inch monitor. And I'll tell you, Mark Beauchamp, he's gone now, but I would have liked to have teased him while I was here. I've sat through plenty of his presentations in that council chambers as an audience member. And with that monitor off to your left, by the time the night's done, your neck's getting pretty sore, trying to look at that screen and then look back up to see how the folks at the officials are reacting to it. This pretty much puts that focus back where it should be. It's up there at the where all the officials are sitting. The mobile cart, this isn't something we weren't really looking for, but opportunity came up and we went ahead and went with it. This little guy gets a lot of work, not so much during the meetings, but during the daytime. But this one will have a totally independent conferencing system. Usually sits in the back side of the council chambers on the
the north side of the partition wall there. But it'll be able to do wireless presentations. It'll have the camera and the microphone, speaker, and the whole bit. So if we get over towards the lectern, all that equipment, and you notice that rack is kind of pushed out, which is underneath the lectern. Every time we pull that out, it seems like it gets harder and harder to get back in with all the cabling and stuff behind there. That whole thing will go away, so that'll clean up that area. The Elmo and that side cabinet beside it will go away, which will allow us to move that lectern over towards the wall. On the wall will be a 20-inch touchscreen, as well as one up at the clerk station. And this will let you do the old John Madden thing where you can, you know, if you're talking about, and I've seen a lot of meetings like this where people will start talking about, you know, what's that street up there in the right-hand side of your picture? And, you know, nobody can seem to get it. Well, somebody could walk up here and circle the darn thing and get done with it. But I thought that was kind of a nice little feature to add in there. So the second, the wall-mounted display that we have now would be moved over to the other side of the partition wall up above, again, to keep that focus up towards the front. But there's not really going to be much cost to that because it's just a move. And then one of the value engineering that the folks that we're working with did, so we've got this AV desk in the basement. There's 4 sections here. Rather than quoting us a new desk, they suggested to go ahead and reuse this one up in the new space, because we will be relocating all production at this time from the basement up to where the refrigerator is on the back side of the council chambers. Bob Granger's got plans on moving that or getting a new refrigerator in there in the space behind there, that hallway behind. This is really it's kind of a security setup for us. We won't have to have people that aren't associated with, you know, the city of Coldwater or BPU with access to the basement to use this equipment. They'll be able to just walk in the back. If they need to adjust things, they'll just go between the 2 rooms then rather than into the basement. Few other items that aren't on this quote. They were on the quote, but we pulled them off, or for top 3 anyway. And that's just for continuity. We wanted to buy our own PCs because we're pretty good at buying PCs. We know what we want. We try to kind of keep them similar so that when if we need parts or service, that's all easier to handle. But the PC at the clerk station, so a guy like Jeff Budd won't have to bring his desktop anymore, and you guys won't have to see his desktop screen in the background there with all 10,000 of his icons. There'll be a PC there. It'll be on its own network. If somebody wants to bring in a thumb drive, we can plug it right in. If they blow up the PC, we rebuild it. But it'll be a much more secure setup. Another PC for the production area, and that's for the recording of the video mostly, but also to do the conferencing itself. And then a network PoE switch. A few items that aren't being replaced. If you look at the monitors at the Horseshoe, we did an upgrade on those a few years back. They're doing fine right now. I think they're probably about 5 years old or something like that. But they can handle the higher resolutions. And then, you know, not a lot of technology changes in audio. So the microphones, the speakers, really no reason to upgrade those things. Of course, those Winstead AV desks that I mentioned in the basement, the existing wall display are items that aren't being replaced. Got 2 bids on it. The first bid was Tel Systems. They were the folks that did our system to begin with back in 2002. I suppose their work was being done in 2001. But they came in at almost $125,000. They use really top-end, high-end Creston equipment.
So it wasn't surprising they came in pretty high. I was real happy when I found it's Smart Home, Smart Offices, what the acronym of the second vendor, who is also a My Deal vendor, so that, you know, they've got that contract with the state for state pricing that we can take a hold of. And I don't have to go out and find a third vendor for such a complicated project here. But their price came in considerably lower. And that is what we're recommending, is that we go with that SHSO from Mason, Michigan for $70,415.73. And the BPU share of that would be $35,207.87. So that's what we're looking for approval for.
Pat did a real nice job of, excuse me, of laying out the needs. As he mentioned, a lot of these things and a lot of these rooms are used a lot of times through the day. So, but again, him and his team did a really nice job of figuring out what our needs are. Some of the things we didn't agree on, but that's okay. But again, I think there's also things on there that are more probably wanted on the city side than necessarily a BPU need. But we do share all the costs 50-50 on this building. So it was probably only fair to continue that. So again, just want to tell Pat what a great job he did in getting this around. And it is, we didn't replace this every year. So it's been a long time in coming. 18 years ago, this was state of the art. Not so much anymore. So
now that the basement is freed up, would the director get moved into the basement?
I only wish. I only wish.
So Jeff, just to be clear, we're splitting this with the city?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion, Mackin.
Thank you.
Support Willett.
Thank you. Roll call.
Member Willett,
Yes.
Member Whelan,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
and President Stevens.
Yes. Thank you, guys and ladies. Okay, next on the list is gonna be the Butters Avenue Substation construction progress report. Turn it over to Jim, I think.
Hello, everyone. As you can see by the pictures, it's really looking like a substation these days. They've just about got all the equipment mounted, wired. They have the secondary bus aluminum tubes. There you go. If you go down to the pictures there, so yeah. So everything's wired up. Here on the, oh, there we go. The wireway, they have all the wire to the equipment installed in the trench, and on the bottom picture on the right, you can see all the wires coiled up outside of the trench. The control building will be placed on the piers next to all that wire. I think that's scheduled for delivery in October. So they're getting really close to running out of work in the substation and starting to build the circuits out of the substation. So we've been finalizing the easements with Voltec and HC Stark here the last week, so that they can start building those circuits out. Does anyone have any questions? There's all the wiring, and then there on the right is where the building will sit. No questions? We'll move on to the next. Big Boy Lift Station. They have the water and sewer tied in on the west side of Michigan Avenue now. And the road is filled in and open for traffic now. And they're making their way towards the parking lot where the lift station will be placed. They have installed the dewatering system around where the lift station is going to sit. And I think they'll be working on drilling and digging the area out for the lift station to be set. So. Any questions on that?
Just a couple comments. I know, you know, a couple things going back on the substation. There are some, the water retainage, if you drove by and looked at it, we're still working on why that is not draining as it should. We're bringing back in the civil engineer to take a look at it. Again, we don't want a mosquito fest over there, so we want to make sure that we're getting that water. We retain it during the storm and then it's supposed to release. So we are working on getting that corrected or figuring out what is causing that water to dam up. One thing also to point out, I know Jim's been talking a lot about our side of the substation. The other side is owned by ITC. So ITC already has their powerhouse already there, or they're switching and some of their stuff. So if you got questions, you know, there's the ITC side and our side, and there is a fence between them. So it's quite evident which side is theirs, which side is ours. And again, we just want to, again, thank Voltec, Sekisui Voltec, as well as HC Stark for working with us on the easements. They have been a very valuable partner in getting this to happen, which is really going to benefit everybody in the community to be able to have the flexibility with a third source coming into town that will really help our reliability. So definitely want to thank their community spirit for both of those companies. They're great business partners. And we do, going on the lift station, I know it's going a little bit slower. We had the road closed a little bit longer than we would have liked, but things are going very well. We think this is going to be a real quality project. So we are continuing to move forward and glad we're past the road. So again, apologize for the inconvenience while that road was closed a little bit longer than we would have liked. Chris, you're muted.
My kids were yelling in the background. I had to do it for a second. Sorry, guys. Any other questions for Jeff or Jim? I guess we'll move on to the Aspen Wireless Progress Report. Turn it back over to Pat.
All right. So we are still plugging along on that phase 2 of the fiber to the home process. Go through a few slides here. Made some good progress since we last talked on the servers. Integration, really starting to make some headway on that one now. I expect that one to jump up really quick going forward. Sonar setup is nearing completion. Plume Wi-Fi and testing has kind of leveled out for right now. We ran into a few problems. So. Node 7, it's all done except for the splicing. They'll get to work, supposed to be working on that here in the next couple weeks. Same with Node 8, Node 9. And then Node 11 is where they're working right now. You can see the splicing's at about 75%. Once it's complete there, they'll start moving into one of those nodes above. Node 13, the boring's all done. Most of the fiber, or 70% of the fiber installation about 60% of the MSTs are installed up in that area. Node 5 boring is all done. There really wasn't much to do there. Fiber installation has begun in Node 5. We got a couple nodes here that didn't start, or at least 12 didn't. 15 though, we actually a little ahead of schedule to be into this area here. B&M Ashman, one of the 3 construction crews that we have going, they are moving right along. They've got quite the operation. I went out and list, if you've seen them out there operating, they've got their buckets truck is rated to be able to string those lines in the air and move at the same time. They got intercom systems in between the cab and the bucket, and boy, those guys really can put a lot of fiber up on the strand in a day's time. From there, there's really nothing else going on in these other nodes until we get a little farther along. We get to the budget. Everything's really coming along really nicely with the budget. I think we've accounted for about everything we could imagine at this point. And with going with the 3 vendors, the savings that we saw there, the materials came in quite a bit under budget when we ordered those. So it looks like right now we've got a budget surplus of about $1 million, where I'm having a hard time seeing where that money would be going, other than to be going to the last mile costs, which will be the next slide coming up in future ones, but we don't really have any last mile costs yet because we haven't hooked anybody up. But we hope to hook up our first friendlies here after Labor Day, week of the 8th, it looks like, is when we're hoping to hook up a few friendlies. We've got some beta testers out there that are wanting to work with us, so we're going to get them hooked up, get the process moving, and then from there we're looking at sometime in October bringing on the first customers onto the system. So it's a good process. We've still got a lot of training and back end things to do, but that all is progressing well. And that's really all I have. So if anybody has any questions.
No, just a statement. I still don't have it to my house.
Correct.
Just to contact that.
It's not in front of your house yet. That is true.
By next week though, right?
I don't mind next week. It's gonna be a little harder to get to. So, but that the aerial stuff is just really moving along slick.
I see them out there working. They're doing a really good job, it looks like.
Boy, but when you get that underground, woof, that really slows things down. So, but we are. I tried to. I think we're probably about 6 months, even really conservatively, probably 6 months ahead of schedule right now. So
awesome.
Hopefully, weather holds up and we don't get any further lockdowns that would keep these guys from going out and doing their thing. And hopefully, we can bang this thing out and get customers hooked up and finish it up.
You have anything to add, Jeff?
No, other than Pat's doing a great job. Bob Worley, doesn't get a lot of face time, but he's doing a great job. Aspen, we're very, very happy with what Aspen is, and we're getting very, very excited. I'm getting a little overwhelmed, as I know our whole staff is, thinking, how are we going to do this, and how many people do we got to hire? So there's a lot of things that got to happen very quickly to do this last mile. So again, our goal is to hook people up as fast as humanly possible.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Move on to, is there any public comment?
Again, there's only one phone caller on. If that phone caller wants to make a comment, please press *9 on your telephone keypad. No response.
Okay, we'll move on to the director's report. Back to you, Jeff.
Yes, I'm going to just share my screen to talk over it a little bit. Wanted to just announce 3 promotions that have taken place. John Foley, he's been doing a great job. He's been employed with us since 1995. We have actually moved him out of the union into a management position. He has taken over for where Ken Day kind of left off a couple years ago now. He does hold his B operator license, which that is the license needed to operate our plant. John has really stepped up since Ken has left and has been running that plant for a while now. So this is just something that's been maybe a little overdue, but definitely want to thank John for his efforts. In addition, on the IT side, Josh Smith and Craig Figaro have also taken kind of new roles, or more defined roles, I think is a better way to put it. They both used to be system administrators, but what we were able to do, and this is based on the Plant Moran study, is really to separate their duties to become a little more specialized. Josh is now the full-time systems administrator, and Craig is now an IT specialist. So he's kind of the end of the game. He's going to come and fix my computer when I can't get it running, which is most days. But then he will work with the rest of the folks, to make sure that everybody can. And again, you can say, well, does the BPU really need that? Well, if you think about how many computers we have, this is not just a BPU thing, because they're actually working for the city and BPU, but although they're BPU employees, the police and fire, obviously, they have a lot bigger need for their data needs has grown incrementally. Our IT, our finance, then you add all the cybersecurity threats, which is always an ongoing issue. So again, I know our IT staff, compared to when it was a man of one back in 2002, when we moved in this building with Pat, look where it's grown now. We think we're at the right size of where we need to be, but nothing is done by paper anymore. So again, it's just a credit to the Pat Poole and the team he's assembled. Now adding Sheila, it's just really been a great team effort. So one of the things, just make sure everybody still got on their agenda, is the board workshop. We are still hopefully planning to do that on the 16th. We hope that we will be able to do that live. If not, we may just do it in the council chambers and go from there. One of the things that we've added, is hopefully it'll be a big hit, because I know a lot of people just watch our four corners camera, is we're actually adding cameras to the new Monroe Street, which is the hops on Monroe Street. It's been very popular. So there'll be a camera there, as well as on both water towers. So those will soon be live streamed. Pat, do we have a tentative time on that, when that'll be completed? You're muted. You're muted, Pat.
Four Corners is on YouTube right now, our YouTube channel. And I think Dylan may have the link done now. That's where we had left it. Dylan was working on getting the link on the website. But if you go out to our YouTube channel, Monroe Street's showing up there. Willowbrook is operational. And then that'll be getting added both to the website and the YouTube channel probably before the week's over. And the guys are going up tomorrow on the Bishop Avenue water tower. They actually need some safety equipment from AT&T because AT&T has got a large array of antennas that they're leasing space on top of that tower. And the RF can be dangerous if you're not careful. So we had to kind of schedule that one out a little bit differently. But it'll be coming up soon.
Thank you, Pat. One of the things that we, kind of came up with, we had some HVAC replacements. So we are going to be doing some replacement of some, couple of units have failed and the other ones need to be replaced at the electric service building, as well as the water treatment plant. Both were planned on being replaced in 2022. They are both in excess of 25 years old. The original budget was for $50,000. We think that that number of all the units combined will be less than 30,000. So again, just a little higher on our budget. It was competitively bid. We did reach out to R&M as well as, which had to recuse himself on this bid. But we've tried to, we don't have a lot of local options for HVAC. But again, we went back and worked on the winning bid. And we've actually, he cut his bid a little bit more, so that was good. So again, that's ongoing, nothing that we like to do because repairing stuff is not always fun, but we need to make sure that there is air movement in both of those buildings. One of the downsides of COVID is the Customer Appreciation Day. That has been canceled for this year, but we hope to be back to normal next year. Big event, Saturday, September 26th, 9 to 2, is our household hazardous waste. It's become very popular. We've had a couple of additional townships join us this year, so we are very happy for that. We wish they would all join us. We still think this should be a county-wide program. The city and the BPU, we take care of almost all the administrative costs, so we actually just charge the other townships and the other participating municipalities just the actual hard costs. So all the administration, all the people that take the names and the numbers, we actually take that on ourselves. So again, if you go to our website, you can look at all the things that you can and can't drop off. And again, if you are not from one of these communities, you will be turned away. So again, that's just, one of those things that's fair to everybody. And it's one of those things we are not staffed up to be able to take money at the door. Hydrant flushing will start September 21st. It's usually take about 3 days. So just be careful in and out of those areas as you're driving. We will be closed September 7th in observation of Labor Day. And always one of the good things is people are keeping an eye on us. As you can see, we had these supervisors watching us to make sure we're doing a great job. Again, we made sure that next time they had their proper PPE, so we got them all some little hard hats. And so we'll make sure that next time they come fully dressed. So again, big thanks to our guys. The guy is Jeff Stanton, one of our newest linemen. We always have some Frisbees on the trucks and plastic hard hats, especially when you see the young kids. But this is the nice thing about having municipal owned utility. So we hope that one of these days, one of these young gentlemen will hopefully become a future lineman maybe. So again, I always want to thank our guys when they go out and do other PR stuff like this. It's what we're made of. So again, this was shared to the APPA as well. So, and it always gets a lot of headlines. So
Awesome. Anything else to add, Jeff?
Nope. I think I've spoken way more than I needed to.
Okay. Date of the next meeting, Nikki.
Wednesday, October 7th.
Okay. We will be going in a closed session pursuant to Section 8D of PA 267 of the 1976 to discuss land acquisition.
And just in case anybody's listening and they don't want to stick around to the end, we will not be making any, there will be no votes at the end of this closed session. So if somebody didn't want to either quit watching live streaming or don't want to stick around at the end, we will not be taking any future votes.
Yeah, so the live captioner, Suzanne, you can go ahead and
I just need, Pat, I need a motion real quick though first, please.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Need support or second?
Support Willett.
For it.
I got Willett. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Roll call, Nikki.
Member Wheeler,
Yes.
Vice President Ohm,
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
Member Willett.
Yes.
And President Stevens.
Yes.
So how this will work is you're going to get an invite to go into the closed session from Pat. Just accept the invite. We'll go, it'll kind of like flip over to the closed area. And then when we're done, we will come back into the regular board meeting. So with that, Pat, I'll let you work your magic.
They're coming through
Chris-
Zoom then?
Yeah, you'll stay in Zoom. Yep. So Chris Stevens, Jeff Budd, John Willett, Scott Ohm, Terry Whelan, Travis Mackin. Is that it? Or is Nikki go in too?
Me too. Me too, Pat.
Nikki goes in too. Okay, I am going to open your room.
And just join that host. Join the breakout room. And hopefully, we lost Terry somehow. Didn't make the jump into light speed didn't work to go back into Cyber City. Oh, here she comes. Terry, yep, there she is. She's back.
Okay, I guess we're ready for adjournment. I need a motion to close the meeting. Everyone wants to stay in this meeting.
Yeah, everyone wants to
Don't
stay.
laugh at Scott.
Motion to close the meeting.
Okay,
And the roll call, President Stevens,
yes.
Vice President Ohm. You're muted, but I see your head shaking.
Yes.
Member Mackin,
Yes.
Member Willett. Oh, you're muted too, John.
Kind of jump back into the meeting muted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes.
I can, okay, and Member Whelan,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you everybody for showing up tonight. Appreciate it.
All right.
Sorry it took so
Good
long.
night.
Aye.